The story begins with an unexpected situation. Renia Niju comments that the most beautiful girl in his class was in his room. To his surprise, she speaks to him with the intention of offering a mysterious gesture of gratitude. At that moment, the girl reveals a shocking proposal. She claims that she will become his maid and live to serve him, offering her services in both cooking and cleaning. Even more bewildering is the explanation she provides next. The girl informs him that she has become his in exchange for the staggering sum of 1 billion yen, and she promises to become the ideal maid he has always dreamed of. From there, the narrative shifts back in time to provide context about the protagonist's life. It is mentioned that only a few months have passed since the beginning of high school. During this period, Renia Niju confesses that he lives alone, having run away from home. He also reveals that he has neither friends nor a girlfriend, emphasizing his social isolation. At school, there is a tense encounter with Akihiko Hikusaka, who coldly tells him not to speak to him unless he has something important to say. This episode is followed by a melancholic reflection from Renia, who laments that even his childhood friends, like Akihiko, now reject him. In a brief flashback, it is confirmed that Renia Niju and Akihiko had been very close friends during childhood. Later on, the moment that led to Maya's surprising proposal is unveiled. In a seemingly ordinary scene, someone calls out to Renia, and a book with a girl dressed as a maid on the cover is shown lying on the floor. Renia reacts with astonishment upon discovering that standing before him is Maya Kamishiro, the most attractive girl in the class. Confused, he wonders what is happening as he looks at the book. Maya then extends her hands to return it to him, pointing out that he had dropped it. Embarrassed, Renia barely manages to thank her. Reacting to his embarrassment, Renia admits that he likes maids, which prompts a surprised and excited reaction from Maya. She asks if it's really true and expresses interest in the fact that he appreciates that kind of thing. Then, Maya asks if they are in the same class, confessing that she had always wanted to talk to him. She also tells him that she was worried about seeing him constantly reading alone. During their conversation, Maya points out that he is different, highlighting that no one like her had ever told him that before. She adds that enjoying time alone can also be a wonderful thing, and clarifies that she is not suggesting that being alone is a bad thing. In turn, Renia apologizes for being so solitary. In this exchange, Maya expresses her discomfort at being seen as absent-minded or clumsy, asking Renia if he doesn't think it's a bit rude for people to label her that way. She also comments that she is often told she is different. After returning the book, Maya kindly asks if she can borrow it when he finishes reading it, a gesture that Renia interprets as a sign of goodwill. However, following that interaction, he appears melancholic and thinks that he is probably not meant to be close to someone like her, resigning himself with a simple, "Oh well." Nevertheless, the tone of the story changes drastically when Renia witnesses an alarming scene. Maya is being restrained by a man, while she visibly struggles to break free, yelling at him to leave her alone. Alarmed, Renia calls out her name and asks what's going on. The situation escalates when, with determination, he declares that he is going to call the police. One of the men tells Maya to be quiet and informs Renia that this is none of his business. He then explains that the girl's parents fled, leaving behind a debt of 1 billion yen. Renia, in disbelief, insists that this has nothing to do with her. However, the conflict intensifies when the men reveal that Maya's father had stated he would hand her over as payment for the debt. They also warn Renia that if he gets involved, he will be implicated as well. Upon hearing this, Maya, distressed, pleads with them not to involve Renia, as he has no relation to the situation. Despite this, Renia stands firm. He thanks Maya for her concern, but is interrupted by one of the men, who scolds him for pretending to be brave when he's just a teenager. Far from backing down, Renia remains calm and confident, asserting that everything will be all right. Suddenly, the man notices an object in Renia's hands and, surprised, recognizes it as a confiscated asset from the Niju family. Renia, revealing his true identity, shows a pocket watch with an emblem and introduces himself as the heir of the Niju group. Upon this revelation, the man is stunned. He immediately thinks of the Niju group, recognizing it as one of the most powerful conglomerates in Japan. This organization operates companies in multiple sectors: real estate, banking, commerce, manufacturing, and even railroads. Indeed, they are present in nearly every industrial field in the country. Taking advantage of the tension in the moment, Renya Niju decides to take the initiative and confronts the man who was holding Maya Kamishiro captive. With a firm voice, he reminds him that the Niju family not only has economic power, but also considerable influence in the world of organized crime. He makes it clear that challenging them is not a wise move. With a confident smile, Renya declares that if the dispute is over a debt, he himself will pay it. He then asks if they have any objections. The man, now visibly submissive, responds that if Niju is willing to pay, then there's nothing more to discuss. An agreement is reached, and the man even appears grateful upon receiving a check for 1 billion yen. Once the conflict is resolved, Renya approaches Maya, gently places a hand on her shoulder, and assures her that he will take care of everything. As the two walk away from the scene, Maya looks at him and barely manages to whisper a few words, still in shock. To break the silence, Renya casually remarks that, in truth, 1 billion yen doesn't mean much to him. However, Maya seriously asks why he helped her, considering the enormous amount he just spent. She then admits that she had heard rumors about his wealth, but never imagined his family held such power. In response, Renya explains that his father remarried, which made living with his stepmother and stepsister uncomfortable. When Maya asks if he's serious, he clarifies that because of that situation, he decided to become financially independent and started investing in stocks and funds, allowing him to live on his own. Maya, in turn, recalls her own childhood and relates to his experience, confessing that she also doesn't have a place she can call home. Deeply moved, she promises to repay him for what he's done, even if it takes her a lifetime. However, Renya warmly tells her that she has nothing to worry about, since none of it is her fault. Grateful, Maya says she found it comforting to hear that the billion yen didn't mean much to him, and expresses her thanks for helping her. She also admits that what he did earlier seemed incredible to her. Renya, slightly blushing, thinks to himself that she's more clever than she appears. Scratching his head shyly, he shows a bit of embarrassment, while Maya smiles beside him. Before they part ways, Renya tells her that they'll see each other at school, and she responds enthusiastically, saying yes. At the same time, he looks at her with some curiosity, wondering what's going on with her. Then, Maya, with a mixture of amazement and distress on her face, confesses that she has nowhere to go. In a scene that blends drama with comedy, Maya explains that her parents are gone and her home has been seized. Renya, understanding, replies that he gets it. He adds that, compared to 1 billion yen, paying for a place for her to stay isn't a problem. However, finding one immediately might be a bit tricky. Maya, deeply grateful, exclaims that she doesn't have the words to thank him enough. Renya simply replies that he already knew that. He then asks if she'd consider staying at a friend's house, to which Maya, with a faint smile, replies that she doesn't have any close friends. This surprises Renya, who looks at her in silence. Maya looks back at him and softly asks if he was also her friend now, leaving him even more bewildered. Then, she clasps her hands together and asks if she could stay at his house. Renya, clearly blushing, asks if she's sure and comments that it might be a bit of a burden for her to stay for free. Though he tries to explain that this isn't what he meant, he stumbles over his words. Suddenly, Maya seems to have a brilliant idea. With excitement, she shouts for Renya to follow her for a moment. Without giving him time to react, she grabs his hand and pulls him along. As they walk, Renya watches her, still unsure of what's happening. Shortly after, they arrive at a shop. Maya lights up when she sees something and asks him to wait outside, as she wants to try something on. Renya agrees without protest. From behind the fitting room curtain, Maya tells him not to look, and he, now even more flustered, assures her that he won't. As he waits, Renya notices a pleasant scent. Then, Maya steps out of the fitting room dressed as a maid and thanks him for waiting. He is completely stunned at the sight of her. With a mischievous expression, Maya asks him, since he loves maids, what he thinks about hiring her as his personal maid. Eventually, after a few hours, Renya admits that he couldn't say no. and so he ends up taking her to his house. Once there, visibly embarrassed, he apologizes for the mess. Maya, now fully dressed as a maid, responds casually that it doesn't bother her at all, since cleaning that kind of thing is part of her job. Renia asks if she's really willing to become his maid. Without hesitation, she replies yes. Then she reasons that if he brought her to his house, that means he's going to hire her, right? At that moment, Renia imagines the terrible possibility that Maya might have to spend the night on the street if he refused. The thought leaves him quiet and deeply moved. Lost in her thoughts, Maya Kamishiro imagined herself filled with fear, cold and hungry, desperately missing the comfort of her bed. Faced with that mental image, Renia Niju sighed in frustration and, without hesitating any longer, decided that Maya would stay at his house for the night. Visibly relieved, she sincerely thanked him. And so, Maya ended up becoming a maid and began living with him. Once settled in the room, Maya, smiling and dressed in her maid outfit, explained that, as a form of gratitude, she would dedicate herself to serving him, whether by cooking or cleaning. She also reminded him that, after all, she had become his property in exchange for 1 billion yen. However, she emphasized that the most important thing was her goal to become the ideal maid for him. These words inevitably made Renia blush, while Maya looked at him with a sweet and affectionate expression. However, Renia soon realized that there was only one bed in the room, so he asked Maya where she planned to sleep. A bit uncomfortable, he commented that perhaps the bathroom could be an option. Somewhat irritated, Maya interrupted him, pointing out that it was already late and that the best thing would be to prepare the bed. Renia looked around the room and mentioned that, although he lived alone, the house belonged to the Niju family and had several spare bedrooms. Upon hearing this, Maya asked what they should do then, and Renia, resigned, suggested that he could sleep on the sofa. But Maya immediately stopped him and, with visible distress, protested that such a thing wasn't right. After all, he was her master. Faced with her words, Renia reflected that it wouldn't be appropriate for Maya to sleep on the sofa either. While thinking of a possible solution, Maya, blushing, proposed an unexpected idea. What if they shared the bed? The suggestion left Renia completely stunned. He jumped in surprise and mentally asked himself if she was really being serious. Trying to stay calm, he wondered if Maya wouldn't be bothered by the idea of sharing a bed with a guy. Without hesitation, Maya replied that she wouldn't mind and asked if it was wrong. She added that it wouldn't be a problem at all, since Renia was an attractive guy who had stood by her in a difficult moment. Moments later, Renia realized how late it was and asked Maya if she wasn't hungry. Since she hadn't eaten anything earlier, she, surprised, admitted that he was right. However, she took the opportunity to ask if he was just trying to escape the situation, which made Renia even more nervous. He didn't know how to respond. Eventually, Renia gave in to the circumstances. Although sharing the bed with Maya made him nervous, deep down he couldn't help but feel happy. Still, trying to change the subject, he said he only knew how to make simple meals, since he wasn't very skilled in the kitchen. Maya, without hesitation, responded that he didn't need to worry, she would handle the cooking. This gesture pleasantly surprised Renia, and he thanked her immediately. Taking the chance, he asked her if she was actually good at household chores. Maya replied firmly with a confident "of course," and although with a hint of frustration, she promised she would prove her skills. Without wasting any time, Maya headed to the kitchen, but not before complaining that it was terrible of him to doubt her. However, in her eagerness to show what she could do, she tripped and fell to the floor, crying out in pain. Renia, shocked, quickly rushed over and asked if she was okay, helping her up. Maya, trying to minimize the situation, quickly replied that she was fine and recovered from the scare. Despite the fall, Renia told her it wasn't necessary to try so hard, but Maya insisted, saying she wasn't overexerting herself at all. Then, with enthusiasm, she asked if all guys didn't like homemade food made by a girl. Renia admitted that this was generally true, which prompted Maya to ask for his personal opinion. With a smile, Maya expressed her desire to make him happy. Blushing, Renia admitted that yes, it would make him very happy. Seizing the moment, she proposed a deal. If she managed to cook well, he would have to promise to let her sleep with him as a reward. The unexpected proposal left Renia completely shocked. and he protested visibly. Despite this, Maya, determined, announced that she was heading to the kitchen to get started right away. Renia, somewhat desperate, asked her to wait, but she insisted, wanting to confirm whether what she had just said counted as a promise. Already in the kitchen, Maya was holding a bunch of vegetables and asked if what she had was broccoli. Meanwhile, Renia watched her silently, thinking that Maya was incredibly persistent, though he couldn't help but feel a little worried about her. At that moment, he asked what she was planning to make. Without hesitation, Maya replied that she would cook something he liked. Renia then suggested that maybe she could make ginger pork, since he believed they had the necessary ingredients in the fridge. Excited, Maya accepted the suggestion and enthusiastically declared that it would be the dish. Then she kindly told Renia to go get some rest. Despite his attempts to protest, Renia Niju eventually gave in. Maya Kamasho firmly insisted that he step aside and leave everything in her hands. While she cooked, Renia sat silently watching her, lost in thought. It felt almost unreal to him, having the most beautiful girl in his class preparing a meal just for him. It was as if he were dreaming. Yet, he couldn't ignore the growing anxiety pressing on his chest as he watched Maya focus intently in the kitchen. Suddenly, a loud noise startled him. Alarmed, he asked if something was wrong, holding a frying pan with an unidentifiable bubbling substance inside. Maya asked if the ginger pork was ready. Renia, confused, questioned why she was asking him that. When he saw the final result, a thick, bubbling, and questionable-looking soup, he couldn't help but ask if that was really the dish she had promised. Slightly embarrassed, Maya responded that it was what she had tried to make and asked for his opinion. Renia, speechless, simply blushed. Internally, he thought the result was hard to digest, both literally and figuratively, and that recovering from a failure like that wasn't easy. Maya looked at him with a pout, clearly disappointed. Still, Renia acknowledged to himself that, regardless of the outcome, she had made a sincere effort. He reflected that it wasn't every day one got to eat a homemade meal prepared by a girl. With a mix of courage and resignation, he announced that he would give it a try. Maya watched him nervously as he prepared himself with an expression of absolute concentration. But the moment he took the first bite, Maya cried out his name in concern. Renia leaned over the sink, coughing and vomiting loudly. Despite the unpleasant moment, he immediately apologized, assuring her it wasn't her fault. He understood it was simply a culinary failure. Concerned, Renia asked if she was okay and apologized again for the situation, acknowledging that she had tried very hard. As he tried to calm down, he told himself he would get over it. Still blushing, he asked Maya a difficult question. Was she perhaps not very good at household chores? Visibly embarrassed, Maya deeply apologized. She admitted that she was actually a disaster, clumsy, often scolded at home, and probably a disappointment to him too. But Renia firmly disagreed. He assured her she was not a disaster at all. He described her as beautiful, popular, an ideal figure at school, and talented in both academics and sports. With genuine amazement, Renia told her how surprised he was at how quickly she had recovered from the incident. Maya, letting out a soft laugh, asked if he was being serious. Then, with a mix of humor and resignation, she said that, as his maid, she was supposed to be useful, and if she couldn't be, she felt she had no place there. In response, Renia tried to reason with her. He explained that it wasn't all about skill, but also about the willingness and effort to do something. He asked if she believed in that. Maya nodded with conviction, saying that was where true value lay. With a determined attitude, Renia told her not to worry and announced that he would take care of preparing dinner. Maya, touched, sincerely thanked him for his words and for stepping in. Then, with renewed enthusiasm, she declared that she would prove she could be helpful. Without a doubt, after that episode, they shared dinner, this time prepared by Renia, and later took turns bathing. When she returned, Maya thanked him for lending her clothes and, with a smile, commented that all that was left was to sleep. Renia, trying to remain composed, mentioned that he would sleep on the sofa so as not to make her uncomfortable. However, Maya immediately objected. She argued that it wasn't right for her master to sleep on the sofa after cooking for her and lending her clothes. When Renia asked if she would then prefer to sleep on the sofa herself, Maya completely ignored the logic of his question. She pleaded, saying that despite not being able to cook properly, she wanted to sleep with him in the same place. Confused, Renia asked what exactly she meant by that. Maya replied naturally, asking if normal maids didn't always spend all their time with their masters. Then, with total certainty, she stated that, at least in her world, maids were always close to their lords. Feeling awkward about the conversation, Renia thought it best to drop the subject. He suggested that Maya should be a bit more aware of the situation. That's when Maya, letting her guard down, revealed that sleeping alone really scared her. She confessed that the kidnapping attempt she had recently suffered had been truly terrifying. Finally, she warned that if Renia didn't let her stay with him, she would become very sad and start crying. Finally, visibly flustered and his face red with embarrassment, Renia Neju turned to Maya Kamishiro with a direct question. He wanted to know if this was truly what she wanted. Deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being slightly manipulated. Nevertheless, Maya joyfully celebrated his reaction, assuring him that he was truly a kind person. At her insistence, Renia gave in, though he made it clear it would be just for that night. Once in the bedroom, as the two stared at each other in silence, Maya broke the moment with a quiet confession. She wanted to tell him something important. In a soft voice, she revealed that she had problems with her family and, with a hint of melancholy, added that she had always longed to have someone by her side. She wanted to feel like she wasn't alone. Renia simply nodded, responding with a brief, "I see," unsure of how to act. At that moment, he realized Maya had already fallen asleep. Resigned, he thought he had no choice but to accept the situation as it was. Watching her sleep peacefully with a smile on her face, Renia reflected that if, at that moment, he could be her shelter and offer her some peace, then everything was fine. Still, he couldn't hide his nervousness. He admitted to himself that he was having trouble falling asleep and felt restless about the whole situation. The next morning, still groggy, he thought to himself that he was tired but had to get up for school. He wondered about the strange sensation he was feeling, and that's when he fully woke up, upon realizing there was something beside him. Maya had also woken up, her cheeks flushed, and she called out his name loudly. Immediately, she apologized profusely, but Renia, still confused, told her not to. Maya, still lying next to him, said she was embarrassed for having caused him trouble. However, he assured her it wasn't any trouble at all. In fact, it was more like a reward. Surprised, Maya repeated that holding her was a reward for him. Renia nodded shyly, saying that the fact she trusted him made him happy. He clarified, of course, that everything had been unconscious, with no strange intentions whatsoever. With a smile, Maya decided to change the topic and asked if she could borrow the book he had, the one about being a maid. Renia, slightly embarrassed about the book's content, explained that he thought he had put it back on the shelf after finishing it the previous day. Still, he told her he had no problem lending it to her. So, the two went over to the bookshelf. Upon seeing it, Maya exclaimed in surprise that it looked like a library, while Renia shrugged, saying he just had a lot of books. Curious, Maya asked if he had read them all, adding that she liked reading randomly. In his thoughts, Renia clarified to himself that he didn't only read about maids. Maya then commented that she wanted to read that book too and told him he shouldn't be embarrassed about it. He thought those kinds of stories wouldn't interest her, but she disagreed. She said she read a lot, including genres like mystery and science fiction. Intrigued by Renia's reading habits, Maya asked him to lend her any book he found interesting. She even mentioned using the MAID book as a reference for her role. Renia, surprised, asked if she would seriously use a light novel as research material. Maya replied by asking if that book hadn't captured his interest. Renia responded that perhaps a more educational book would be better. Still, he confessed, though embarrassed, that he thought the maid in the book was cute. Smiling, Maya declared that her goal was to become the ideal maid for him, so there was nothing wrong with that. Then, with a teasing tone, she added that if that book featured the maid he preferred, then it must be his ideal book. Faced with such logic, Renia gave up and agreed to lend it to her, handing it over immediately. Maya thanked him with a warm and sincere smile. However, upon noticing the time, Maya rushed off to get ready for school. But in her hurry, she tripped over the bookshelf and fell to the floor, dragging several books down with her. Groaning in pain, she immediately called for help. Renia quickly rushed over to assist her, asking her to calm down. Maya, a bit dizzy, said everything was spinning. Later, at school, Renia slumped onto a bench with a long, exhausted sigh. He thought about how intense the previous day had been and admitted that living with such a beautiful girl was bad for his heart. As he tried to catch his breath, Maya suddenly appeared, leaning over him and calling his name. Renia jumped in surprise, yelling out from the shock. Annoyed, Maya asked him not to react as if he had seen a ghost. It hurt her feelings. Renia asked what was going on, and she explained with a slightly concerned tone that he was popular, and she was worried about what others might think if they found out they were living together. For that reason, Maya suggested they keep their cohabitation a secret. Renia, still confused, nodded silently, accepting her suggestion. Upon understanding the implications of Maya Kamashiro's suggestion to keep their living arrangement a secret, Renia Niju reflected with unease. He thought that if the situation were to be exposed at school, many might assume they were in some kind of inappropriate relationship. Because of that, he asked if she was suggesting it out of concern that it might be uncomfortable for him. As he tried to process everything, he repeated the phrase to himself, "A secret, just between Renia and me." At that moment, a fleeting memory overwhelmed him. A scene from the past came to mind, something tied to a forgotten promise, and he realized he had done something similar once before. However, his deep thoughts were suddenly interrupted when a classmate, Shiobara-kun, approached Maya with curiosity. He asked what they were doing and whether she and Renia were really as close as they seemed. Maya, without hesitation, coldly replied that Renia was just an acquaintance. The answer left Renia stunned, unable to hide his disappointment at such a blunt denial. Internally, he admitted that while he hadn't expected her to say they were close, he had at least hoped she would call him a friend. He realized he had allowed himself to hope for too much. Moments later, Shiobara-kun changed the subject and invited Maya to a barbecue that the boys from the soccer team were organizing. But just then, Akihiko Hikusaka appeared, interrupting with a stern tone. She called Shiobara an idiot and demanded that he stop pressuring Maya. She warned that if anyone wanted to flirt, they should do it somewhere else. Maya, thankful, expressed her gratitude to Akihiko for stepping in. Akihiko gave Maya a direct piece of advice. She shouldn't stay silent and had the right to speak up if she was uncomfortable. She asked if she liked the guy, and Maya admitted she found him a bit pushy. Akihiko then assured her that in that case, she didn't need to worry about the boy next to her, referring to Renia. Renia, confused by the comment, asked if she needed something. Akihiko, a little uncomfortable, scolded him for calling her so casually by name. Observing the interaction, Maya couldn't hide her puzzlement. She asked if they were good friends, surprised by their apparent closeness. The question caused a brief moment of tension. Akihiko, visibly irritated, immediately replied that they were just childhood friends, then added with disdain, "Who would want to be friends with someone like Renia?" In his mind, Renia assumed that Akihiko despised him, and to his surprise, she confirmed that thought without hesitation. She clarified that just because they had been childhood friends didn't mean they would stay that way forever. People change, she said. Renia looked at her and thought to himself that she was responsible, intelligent, and popular, someone very different from himself, a loner with no remarkable traits. But Akihiko contradicted him, saying that wasn't true and that he did have friends. At that moment, Maya interrupted the conversation with an unexpected declaration. She said she was Renia's friend. Both Akihiko and Renia turned to her, visibly surprised. Maya sincerely apologized to Renia for previously saying he was just an acquaintance. Akihiko, skeptical, asked if the super gorgeous Shinju-san really considered that impulsive guy her friend. Slightly surprised by the compliment, Maya smiled and began praising Renia. She said he was an amazing and kind person and added that just the day before, he had helped her find a place to live. Hearing this, Renia panicked. He blurted out that they shouldn't mention that they lived together. Akihiko, picking up on that phrase, immediately asked what he meant by a place to live. Before she could ask further, Renia cut her off abruptly, saying it wasn't her business. Akihiko, with indifference, replied that indeed it wasn't. However, she followed up with a serious reproach. She told Renia he had a habit of forgetting his promises. Renia reacted with surprise. Then he remembered that day was Akihiko's birthday. Smiling, he wished her a happy birthday. Akihiko was visibly surprised that Renia had remembered. She sincerely thanked him, saying it made her happy that he hadn't forgotten. This confused Renia even more. He thought to himself that he didn't understand why she looked so happy, especially when she supposedly couldn't stand him. That's when Akihiko asked if he remembered that, when they were kids, she had given him a birthday present. After thinking for a moment, Renia recalled it was a hair clip. He added with some irony that she had probably thrown it away. To his surprise, Akihiko vehemently denied it. She said she still kept it with care and, in fact, sometimes even wore it. Both Renia and Maya were left stunned by her confession. To prove it, Akihiko pulled out a small heart-shaped box and, upon opening it, revealed the hair clip. Renia, speechless, confirmed that it was indeed the same one. He asked if she really carried it with her all the time. Blushing, Akihiko denied that the item held any special meaning. She said she just liked it, that's all. Amid the school setting, a childhood memory vividly resurfaced in Renia's mind. In that scene from the past, little Akihiko was receiving a birthday gift from him, one she considered a true lucky charm. Renia, smiling innocently in the memory, was happy that she had liked it, while Akihiko tenderly thanked him. As both reminisced about that moment, Maya Kamishiro couldn't help but feel uneasy witnessing the connection between them. In an attempt to step in, Renia offered to give Akihiko another birthday present if she agreed. Surprised, Akihiko reacted with a shy smile and asked if he could then accompany her after class to look at a dress she wanted to buy. That's when the tension escalated. With a determined expression, Maya intervened before Renia could respond. Grabbing him firmly by the arm, she said she had something pending with him and that he wouldn't be able to go with Akihiko. Akihiko, now suspicious, silently watched them both, internally questioning the nature of their relationship. In a probing tone, she asked if they were going on a date. Maya, somewhat nervous, denied it was anything like that. However, as Akihiko pressed further, she countered, if it wasn't a date, then there shouldn't be any problem with Renia going with her. At that moment, both girls locked eyes in a clear atmosphere of tension. Finally, Maya, visibly upset, firmly declared that yes, what they had was a date. The statement caught Akihiko completely off guard. Without another word, she ran off, calling Renia a dummy and leaving him utterly bewildered. In his thoughts, he regretted what had happened. He felt they had been about to reconcile, but now he wondered if Maya had lied about the date. Maya, with a guilty expression, apologized and admitted that yes, she had lied. However, she clarified that it wasn't a complete lie. She argued that if a boy and a girl went out together after school, it could be considered a date, and she confessed she truly did want to go out with Renia. Upon hearing this, Renia asked if she didn't feel bad about what she had done. But Maya, without hesitation, replied that there was no reason to feel bad. After all, part of a master's duty was to fulfill the wishes of his maid. As they shared this moment with apparent ease, neither of them realized that Akihiko had overheard the entire conversation from afar. The scene shifted outside. Maya and Renia were walking together, carrying shopping baskets. She was smiling enthusiastically, and he looked relaxed. A shot focused on the baskets, while an inner voice excitedly announced they were out shopping. Maya, cheerful, confirmed it was indeed fun. Fun, she said, because Renia was with her. With a bright smile, Maya loudly declared that what they were doing was, without a doubt, an after-school date. Renia looked at her, surprised. In response to his reaction, she asked if there was a problem, reminding him that if someone saw them, it could become problematic. However, Renia assured her that it wasn't an issue. From a distance, Akihiko silently spied on them. Then, Renia suddenly panicked and exclaimed, worried about what would happen if someone found out they lived together. Upon hearing this, Akihiko reacted with complete shock at what she had just heard. Later at the supermarket, Maya noticed the tension in her companion and asked why he had brought up Akihiko. She directly asked if he was worried about her finding out. She also remarked that there seemed to be a special closeness between him and Akihiko. Renia explained that it was simply because they were childhood friends. At that moment, Akihiko, still hidden, was shaken by the confirmation that they indeed lived together. Meanwhile, Renia admitted that although they hadn't been that close for a while, he actually knew very little about her. Maya looked at him, slightly blushing, and leaned in with a teasing question. She wanted to know if he wasn't happy to have such a cute childhood friend. Renia replied bluntly that Akihiko wasn't his girlfriend. Maya, however, suggested that maybe, if he confessed his love, she might accept him. Renia dismissed that possibility, arguing that Akihiko was far too popular to pay attention to someone like him. Maya then gently scolded him, pointing out that he referred to Akihiko by her name. Renia explained that he couldn't call her by her first name in her presence because she didn't like it. Watching him silently, Maya thought that, despite everything, Akihiko seemed genuinely happy with the attention Renia gave her. He, for his part, quietly said he hoped that was true. Then, Maya suddenly changed the subject and, as if it were the most natural thing, informed him that her birthday was on March 3rd. Renia, confused by the abrupt mention, asked if there was any particular reason for bringing it up and jokingly asked if it was some kind of administrative custom related to celebrations. Before Maya could respond, he asked her if she believed in astrology. This unexpected question caused a brief silence between them. Nevertheless, Maya broke the pause with a surprised expression and enthusiastically stated that, of course, they would celebrate her birthday too. She even added that she might organize a party for him. With great excitement, Maya thanked Renia, assuring him that it was a promise. She insisted the celebration had to be held at home, to which Renia agreed without objection. Even so, he couldn't help but think that March was 6 months away, and he silently wondered whether he and Maya would still be together by then. Back at home, Maya, bursting with energy, announced that it was time for the attention of the maid of the day. This declaration struck Renia as odd, and he couldn't help but think it sounded like the name of a TV show. Maya then explained that, since she had tried cooking the day before, that day she would focus on doing laundry and cleaning instead. However, Renia told her that it wasn't necessary to push herself so hard. In response, Maya gently scolded him, asking if he didn't trust her. Although she admitted she wasn't particularly skilled at housework, she insisted she could handle simple tasks. Meanwhile, she moved back and forth with energy, cheerfully humming with a smile on her face. With renewed enthusiasm, Maya announced that it was time to do the laundry. However, at that moment, she reacted with surprise upon seeing something among the clothes. Renia stepped in and suggested that she should separate the garments before washing them, although he added that it wouldn't be a big deal if she didn't. Still, upon seeing Maya start to struggle, he advised her to leave the laundry for later. Even so, Maya didn't give up. With a smile and a rag in hand, she confidently declared it was time to clean. As she prepared to do her best, she confidently proclaimed that everything would be spotless. However, Renia thought to himself that it was customary to vacuum first to remove the dust and wondered whether Maya knew that. As expected, Maya eventually collapsed during her cleaning attempt. Exhausted, she dropped to the floor while apologizing, and Renia caught her in his arms. Gasping, she apologized again, sadly admitting she wasn't good at anything. Calmly, Renia encouraged her to relax and told her it was okay if she wasn't good at it. These words deeply moved Maya, who burst into tears and didn't hesitate to hug him, overwhelmed by emotion. The gesture caught Renia by surprise. He hadn't expected such an intense reaction. Just then, Akihiko appeared, unleashing an eerie presence and shouted, demanding to know what they were doing. As both of them were left speechless, Akihiko's fury kept growing. Immediately, Renia separated Maya from his side and scolded Akihiko, saying that entering someone's house without permission was a crime. He then asked her what she was doing there. Akihiko explained that she had been ringing the doorbell without getting a response, and upon finding the door open, decided to enter. Renia, visibly nervous, asked if she was serious, to which she firmly nodded. He then warned her to be careful, since Maya also lived in that house. Surprised, Renia asked if that wasn't a leading question, implying that Akihiko already knew. Maya, for her part, confirmed that Akihiko was right, admitting she lived there and acknowledging she should be more careful with the situation. Meanwhile, Renia felt the need to find a proper explanation. Then Akihiko, visibly upset, demanded to know if it was true that Maya lived there and why he hadn't told her. She also asked if that meant they were a couple. Renia firmly denied such a relationship, clarifying that Maya was his maid and that there was a longer explanation behind it. However, Akihiko resolutely declared that she had already made a decision. From that moment on, she too would live there, of course, as a maid. This statement left Maya confused, and she asked in surprise if that meant Akihiko also had a 1 billion yen debt and had lost her home, just like what had happened to her. Akihiko reacted in disbelief, exclaiming that couldn't be true. She then asked Renia if that really was Maya's situation. Upon hearing his confirmation, she acknowledged it was a difficult situation. At that moment, Renia remembered the promise he had made with Akihiko. She noticed and asked if he finally remembered, which left Maya completely confused, as she had no idea what they were talking about. Finally, looking away, Akihiko said she couldn't help it, while recalling a memory from 5 years ago. In that scene from the past, Akihiko and Renia were children, playing a video game together. Frustrated, she asked him why he was so strong, lamenting having lost again. He calmly replied that he just had a few tricks, which astonished her. Amid that memory, Akihiko reflected. She remembered that her mother had been a maid in the Renia household and had also taken care of Renia. For that reason, she had grown up alongside him in the family mansion from a very young age. Immediately afterward, Akihiko expressed her deep admiration, pointing out that Renia could do everything, study, play sports, and excel at any activity. With great sincerity, she said she thought he was amazing. In response to such praise, Renia explained that, as a member of the Niju family, he was expected to be competent in everything. However, Akihiko firmly replied that what made him admirable wasn't his family name, but his worth as a person. Despite the encouraging words from the young girl, Renia couldn't hide his distress. He murmured sadly that he wished things were as she said, confessing that most people only saw him as a member of the Niju family, without ever considering who he truly was. Upon hearing this, Akihiko was visibly moved. With a strong, determined voice, she shouted that she wasn't like the others and assured him she appreciated him for who he really was. Just then, the conversation was interrupted by Sakirako Shirakawa, the maid of the Niju household, who arrived to announce that it was time for afternoon tea. Addressing the young master and Akihiko, she politely informed them that everything was ready. Renia responded to the announcement with an energetic, affirmative exclamation. However, Akihiko quickly picked up on a small gesture in Renia's expression. With a playful tone, she asked if perhaps he liked Sakirako-san, or if he had been mesmerized by the maid uniform. Renia hurried to deny both possibilities, visibly flustered. That's when Akihiko had an idea. She asked him directly if he would like to see her in a similar uniform. After a brief pause and blushing slightly, Renia admitted that maybe he would like to see that. Upon hearing his confession, Akihiko, excited and determined, told him to look forward to it, because very soon she would show him. Days later, the scene shifted dramatically with Akihiko's spectacular entrance dressed in a maid uniform. With a big smile, she asked Renia what he thought of her outfit. Renia, completely embarrassed, could barely mumble a few words, while she proudly showed off her uniform. He sat with his knees pulled up, eventually managing to compliment her. He told her the uniform looked great on her, that she looked like a very capable maid, and added that, in his opinion, she looked really cute. Curious, Renia quickly asked how she had managed to get a child-sized maid uniform. Akihiko explained that she had asked her mother, who made it specially for her. At that moment, the girl reflected aloud, saying she wanted to be like her mother and become a maid. With a radiant smile, she reaffirmed her wish with determination. Renia then noticed a detail in her outfit. He exclaimed in surprise that she was wearing the hair clip he had given her for her birthday. Akihiko, slightly blushing, nodded and asked him if it matched well with the maid uniform. Finally, Akihiko placed her hands over Renia's and, with great resolve, declared that when she grew up, she would become the maid that only he would want to watch. This declaration completely stunned Renia. However, Akihiko smiled and firmly clarified her intentions. She wouldn't be just any maid of the Niju family. She would be his personal maid. She asked him directly if he was okay with that. Embarrassed, Renia took a moment to think about the idea. Noticing his expression, Akihiko asked if he didn't want that to happen. He said he had no objection and, after a small smile, admitted that it sounded like a fun idea. Still, Akihiko wasn't satisfied. She demanded that he take it seriously and reminded him that it was a promise, asking for confirmation. With conviction, she reaffirmed her goal. She would become the perfect maid for Renia-sama. Amid a series of memories, Akihiko recalled her childhood. When she was a little girl, she deeply admired Renia. To her, he was amazing, capable of everything, and also kind. That admiration became the driving force behind her efforts. For that reason, she wanted to attend the same high school as him. So, she studied diligently, took the entrance exam, and was accepted, which brought her immense joy. However, the memories soon took on a darker tone. Akihiko reflected on the difficult times, especially when Renia was emotionally hurt and she hadn't been able to help him at all. She also remembered that after the head of the family remarried, her mother quit her job as a maid, which caused a gradual distance to form between her and Renia. Time passed, and the scene shifted to the hallways of the high school. There, Akihiko, now dressed in her school uniform, approached Renia, calling him by name and asking if he had been skipping classes lately. He barely reacted, expressionless. When she insisted, asking why, Renia simply replied that he didn't have any particular reason. In a moment of tension, Akihiko demanded that Renia act more seriously, reminding him that he was the heir to the Niju family. At her words, Renia reacted coldly and asked if she, too, was going to refer to him in such a distant way. Then, with a deep and firm voice, he made it clear that he was no longer the same Renia she remembered from their childhood. Those words struck Akihiko deeply, leaving her frozen in shock. She couldn't believe he was serious. Unable to bear what she had just heard, she ran away in tears, calling him an idiot. As she fled, a thought filled with frustration echoed in her mind. Renia probably didn't even remember the promise they had made as children. The scene shifted back a few hours, just before Akihiko had unexpectedly shown up at Renia's house. At that moment, upon seeing how well he and Maya were getting along, she became discouraged, suspecting that they might be hiding something. Without hesitation, she decided to enter the building to find out what was really going on. Back in the present, after hearing the whole story, Maya stepped in with a direct and provocative question. She wanted to know if that meant Akihiko was a stalker. This accusation sparked immediate tension. Visibly upset, Akihiko forcefully denied it, shouting in exaggerated disbelief at how Maya could reach such a conclusion. However, Maya responded calmly, saying the answer was simple. It was obvious that Akihiko loved Renia and wanted to be his maid. At this, Akihiko nervously replied that it wasn't love, and that she didn't have any feelings for Renia. She clarified that it was all because of a promise, though deep down, she admitted to herself that it might seem foolish to still believe in a promise made when they were just children. Unexpectedly, Renia appeared and told Akihiko that he didn't think it was foolish to hold on to that promise. On the contrary, he regretted not having remembered it all this time. Moved by his words, Akihiko seized the moment to ask him if then he would hire her as his maid. The question completely stunned Renia. What followed was a comedic exchange between Akihiko and Maya. Akihiko insisted there was no reason not to hire her, since there was a promise involved. However, Maya wasn't about to stand idly by. She firmly declared that she was already Renia's maid. To strengthen her point, Maya cited a peculiar proverb she made up on the spot. In the sky, there are not two suns. On earth, not two kings. And at home, not two maids. Confused, Akihiko asked where she got that phrase from. Maya, proudly, replied that she had just invented it. Still puzzled, Akihiko asked why she seemed so proud of it. Unyielding in the argument, Maya turned to Renia and directly asked if he didn't agree that having only one maid was better. Caught in the middle of the conflict, Renia reacted with silent panic. Then, Akihiko stepped forward. She argued that in a normal household, there could be multiple maids, and that, besides, it wasn't proper for only him and Maya to be living together. She added, with subtle insinuation, that the house was clearly a mess, proving the need for more staff. Renia and Maya, still stunned, watched her in silence. With renewed enthusiasm, Akihiko boasted that she had studied a lot about what it meant to be a maid. She claimed she was training to become the ideal maid for Renia. Curious, Maya asked if she was actually good at household chores. Akihiko proudly confirmed that of course she was, although she did mention her mother no longer worked for the Niju family. The discussion took a more personal turn when Maya raised her voice and asked if Akihiko loved Renia and whether that wasn't the real reason behind all her determination. Flustered and blushing, Akihiko shouted that it wasn't like that. To ease the tension, Renia suggested that Maya take a shower, noting that she was dirty and soaked. Realizing her condition, Maya quickly apologized and ran off to clean herself up. However, as she left, she caught a glimpse of Akihiko getting closer to Renia. With firm determination, she muttered to herself that she wasn't going to lose to her. Later, the scene showed Renia and Akihiko sitting together. As she folded clothes, she asked him to stop addressing her so formally, since they were already close. However, Renia pointed out a contradiction. At school, she always asked him not to call her by her name. With a big smile, Akihiko explained that the situation was now different. After all, she was his maid. Then, she announced that she had an important request for him. Surprised, Renia wondered silently why she was speaking, as if that fact had already been decided. Trying to reassure him, Akihiko reminded him that they were childhood friends, so she wouldn't ask for anything impossible. Renia then quietly hoped that her request would be something reasonable. With a confused expression, Renia began recalling all the eccentric requests Akihiko used to make during their childhood. That reflection led him to admit that he wasn't entirely sure about the new request she had just made. Back in the present, Akihiko, not dwelling too much on the details, asked Renia to simply forget everything that had happened before and focus on one thing only. She wanted a maid uniform. Hearing this, Renia asked if she wanted to buy one from a store, pointing out that if that was her only wish, it would be easy to get. However, Akihiko quickly and vehemently denied that her intention was to cosplay, making it clear that what she truly wanted was to become an ideal maid. She then explained that she didn't want a cheap uniform like Maya's, but a genuine one, worthy of the role she aspired to take on. Renia, still a bit confused, asked if there was even a place where such uniforms were sold. In response, Akihiko gave him a suspicious look, wondering if he was imagining something weird. Still, she concluded that Renia, of all people, must know exactly where real maids could be found, so getting the uniform shouldn't be difficult. That statement took him by surprise. Perplexed, Renia confronted her directly, asking if she knew more than she was letting on. In response, Akihiko decided to stop beating around the bush and proposed they go together to the Niju family mansion. Asking if he agreed, once there, the scene changed dramatically. Maya, upon seeing the grand building before her, was completely stunned. She expressed her amazement, comparing the place to something out of a movie. Akihiko remarked that, while the size might be a bit excessive, houses like that were fairly common in Europe. Still, Maya exclaimed in disbelief that they were still in Japan, emphasizing how unusual the setting was. Before going in, Akihiko asked Maya why she was so surprised, considering her family was also wealthy. Maya replied that although that was true, her family lived in a traditional Japanese house, nothing this extravagant. Just then, as they crossed the threshold of the mansion, a maid elegantly descended the staircase in dramatic fashion. Her entrance left everyone in awe. With a charming smile, she greeted the protagonist affectionately, calling him Renia-sama. Everyone was stunned, especially Maya, who couldn't help but exclaim that this woman was a real maid. The woman introduced herself as Sakirako, explaining that she was the maid in charge of serving the Niju family. With a warm tone, she remarked that bringing home two such adorable girls as Akihiko and Maya was truly impressive. Then, turning directly to Renia, she teasingly commented that he certainly knew how to keep things interesting, and playfully asked if they were all living together now. Embarrassed, Renia quickly denied such a thing, trying to steer the conversation in a different direction. he asked Sakurako if she knew Akihiko. At that, Sakurako turned to the young girl and, with tenderness, said she had no idea Akihiko had become so cute. However, she also lamented that Renia had been away for so long. Then, quite suddenly, Sakurako boldly hugged Renia and, with a flirtatious wink, confessed that, honestly, she felt a bit jealous. Everyone was left speechless. Renia, Akihiko, and Maya were all visibly shocked. Outraged by the scene, Akihiko scolded Sakurako, arguing that a maid shouldn't say such things to her master. Sakurako, unfazed, smiled and replied that her relationship with Renia was a special one. Then, with a teasing tone, she asked Akihiko if she also wanted to hug the master. Completely offended, Akihiko immediately denied it, insisting that it wasn't about that. Trying to keep things under control, Renia gently scolded Sakurako, saying she had gone too far with the hug. Sakurako, feigning innocence, replied that she hadn't noticed. However, in a more strategic internal thought, Sakurako admitted to herself that she behaved that way on purpose. She knew Akihiko wouldn't open up unless she was provoked a little. Seizing the moment to return to the main topic, Renia, visibly nervous, suggested they get to the point. Sakurako, however, reminded him that this was supposed to be a special moment between them. She also warned that if they kept playing around too much, her sister would surely scold them. At this, Renia asked her seriously to stop teasing him, and Sakurako hesitantly muttered an ambiguous reply. Still, with a serene smile, she remarked that Renia had grown quite a bit. Meanwhile, Maya, blushing, watched their interaction closely. Clearly intrigued, she approached and asked Renia if he was very close to the maid and if they were good friends. With a nostalgic smile, Renia confirmed that Sakurako had been by his side since he was a child. At that moment, Sakurako cut in energetically, exclaiming that she was the only one who truly knew how adorable Renia used to be. Akihiko, not backing down, responded at the exact same time, declaring that she also knew all of that. However, Sakurako jumped in again, this time with great enthusiasm, announcing that, setting aside the earlier discussion, it was absolutely necessary to prepare a special outfit for Akihiko. Overflowing with excitement, she said that since this was a special occasion, she would make it from scratch. Without wasting time, she invited Akihiko to come with her so she could take her measurements. Seeing how impulsive this was, Renia firmly protested, arguing that there was no need to go to such extremes. He suggested that lending Akihiko a spare maid uniform would be more than enough. But Sakurako gave him a stern look and, in a critical tone, asked if he truly intended to force her to wear a second-hand outfit. She then took the opportunity to remind him that he was the future head of the Niju family, and because of that, he needed to place more trust in those around him. Faced with Sakurako's determination, Renia gave in slightly. With a conciliatory smile, he assured her that they would get the best made uniforms for both of them. Upon hearing this, Maya reacted in surprise and asked if that meant she was included too. Sakurako casually confirmed that she was and announced they'd start with her. The scene shifted to an elegant room, where a mannequin displayed a formal dress, highlighting the opulence of the setting. Maya, standing in front of a mirror, wore an expression of awe and shyness, clearly overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding her. While adjusting the outfit, Sakurako asked if she was enjoying the process. Blushing, Maya replied with a shaky voice that she was just surprised by how rich everything was. With a knowing smile, Sakurako told her that she too was now part of that world, although, of course, in the role of a maid. Then, with a sudden change of tone, Sakurako asked her a direct question: what did she like about Renia? Nervously, Maya remained silent, trying to figure out what she truly felt. But before she could give a clear answer, Sakurako continued, saying she understood the situation, but pointed out that, even if someone helped you repay a debt, no one would want to live with someone they didn't care about. With a piercing gaze, Sakurako asked Maya to describe Renia in her own words. Blushing visibly, Maya finally confessed that she was interested in him, that he was someone important to her, someone who had helped her during a difficult time. At that confession, Sakurako gave a sly smile and advised her to be more proactive, warning her that if she didn't act, Akihiko might take him away. Maya protested immediately, claiming that couldn't happen, but she also admitted that she didn't know what to do. As a final piece of advice, Sakurako told her that if she truly wanted to be Renia's ideal maid, she should ask him directly. With that, her intervention ended. Moments later, Maya appeared in formal attire on a balcony, instantly capturing everyone's attention, especially Renia's, who couldn't stop staring at her. Shyly, she asked if that was the outfit Sakurako had chosen for her. She nodded gently, adding that she had tried on many different models. Renia then revealed that Sakurako enjoyed dressing up cute girls as if they were dolls. Maya, silent, couldn't stop thinking about what he had just said. With a nostalgic smile, Renia added that his sister Tauka used to be Sakurako's main victim, and wondered aloud if Akihiko might be going through the same thing right now. As if to confirm it, a voice could be heard in the distance, shouting at them to hurry up with the measurements. At that moment, Maya turned to Renia and asked if he also thought she was cute. Trying to dodge the question, Renia merely said he was repeating what Sakurako had said. However, Maya gently returned to the topic of the outfit and confessed that she had chosen it with his tastes in mind, hoping he would like it. Visibly nervous, Renia ended up praising her sincerely, telling her it looked great on her and that she looked super cute. Taking advantage of the moment, Maya stepped closer and expressed her desire to become his ideal maid. She delicately asked him to tell her if there was anything specific he wanted her to do for him. Renia, serious, told her there was no need to try so hard to be ideal. But Maya insisted, smiling sweetly. She said that it was very important to her and that she had become a maid for him. As they stood on the balcony looking at each other, Renia reflected silently. Although Maya spoke with conviction, he couldn't help but wonder what she really wanted from him and whether he himself could truly be the ideal master for her. The scene transitioned into the night. Akihiko and Maya proudly posed in their new maid uniforms. Upon seeing them, Renia reacted immediately, exclaiming that they both looked like real maids. At the same time, Akihiko commented, somewhat incredulously, that she couldn't believe the Niju family had finished the outfits in less than a day. Amazed, she concluded that it was truly impressive. With great excitement and determination, Akihiko approached Renia and, without hesitation, declared that she would become a true maid. More specifically, her intention was to become his maid. Overflowing with enthusiasm, she announced that from that moment on, she would do her very best to serve him, and firmly warned him that he needed to be prepared for it. Meanwhile, Maya couldn't help but blush as she watched how close Akihiko was acting toward Renia. The scene only served to intensify the tension between the two girls. Finally, the two rivals confronted each other openly. Maya declared, with determination, that she had no intention of backing down either. After all, she had become his maid first. Unfazed, Akihiko fired back confidently, asserting that her skills as a maid were superior. The air grew thick with tension as the two girls locked eyes in a fierce stare. Renia, caught in the middle, had no idea how to respond, while Sakurako, observing the scene from the side, couldn't help but mutter to herself how adorable the two of them looked. At that very moment, Sakurako stepped forward once again and, in an enthusiastic tone, suggested that, since it was such a special occasion, why not have everyone stay over for the night? She assured them that Renia's sister would definitely be happy with the idea. The suggestion took Renia completely by surprise, and he immediately reacted with visible nervousness. Confused, Akihiko asked if there was some kind of problem with the plan. Renia, growing even more tense, replied that he'd rather avoid running into his sister, Tauka, explaining that even though they were siblings, they weren't exactly close. However, before he could finish explaining, a mysterious female figure appeared behind a half-open door. In a sweet voice, she called out, "Big brother," leaving everyone in stunned silence. The young woman was none other than Tauka, Renia's sister. With energy and excitement, she burst onto the scene shouting his name, and to everyone's shock, she boldly declared that she, too, wanted to become his maid.